What's up, guys? We're back again, and I got a lot of the same question over and over and over. So it's time to answer that question. Can this team solo phase 1? So if you haven't seen the solo video before, you may want to check that out before watching this video. But in that video, I go over all the details of the characters, the kits, how you want to use them, and even some substitutions for different characters if you want to. But if you checked out that video, then you already know what we're doing with this team, and this is the formation that we're going to be using. I'll also give some caveats. Just like with any of these teams, Glut could change this at any time. So be aware of that before you invest in the team, especially with a character like Gadget, who's a little more expensive to get. But with that said, we're going to jump right into this. So when it comes to this run, the important thing is the skills. This isn't easy to do. It takes a lot of skill, practice, and understanding the cooldowns around your skills. Glut is probably one of the most difficult phases out of the entire raid because of some of the way he works with his skills. He removes shields before he hits you, which really hurts with the life on the beacons. So we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to kind of explain what I'm doing for the setup, because the setup is very, very important. So you can see as I'm going through, we've done our Roar with Beast in order to place Shaken on Glut. So because of that, you can see Glut didn't actually put any of the continuous damage on our beacon, which is going to save our beacon for a little bit more with life. We've also been able to throw down our Cauldron. So you can see that placement's pretty good as far as key. We've put Beacon over on the corner. We've put Cauldron right behind Triton. Again, while Triton's doing his blessings, he's going to call Cauldron as well as your Beast to do some damage. And again, like we talked about in the other video, that's all you're going to do with Triton. He's either going to do blessings or basic. So the thing is, your beacon isn't just going to be set and he's going to survive. You're probably going to lose a beacon along the way. So you have to understand that cooldown again to be able to place another one, because it's very important to have a beacon up pretty much at all times. The good thing is, most of the time, Triton is going to actually heal your beacon like that and remove some of this continuous damage. So that's a pretty big step in order to keep your beacon alive. So as we continue around, we're going to make sure we understand when Gadget's IQ is available so that we can remove that turn meter, give us a little bit more time to set up, because again, it isn't necessarily the shields that's mattering, it's the evades. So we want to make sure that we're putting the evades with Hero on our beacon, and we're keeping an eye on what the beacon actually looks like when Glut's taking his turns. So at this point, we're just setting up the team. We're trying to get Gadget down to give crits all around, getting the damage up, and each time we can, we're healing our beacon, we're cleansing our beacon, and we're just trying to keep it alive as long as we can. And this is where it's much more difficult in phase 1 than any other phase, because of the way the beacon loses its shield as Glut hits it. So now as our beacon has its taunt, you can see that Triton keeps giving it more life every time he goes, and this is kind of the key here, and we're just going to keep an eye on it. So our first shadow we went ahead and did on Cauldron. So normally you would think you want to put it on beacon, but at this point we want to get as much magic going as we can. That way we can guarantee that Gadget is going to be able to do her IQ as often as possible, as well as we're going to be able to do our prismatic blessings with Triton. So again, what we're trying to do is just keep beacon alive as long as we can. And that's going to be the important piece here. So with the heals that are coming through and with the evades are the important thing, because every time we have an evade up, that's one less attack, that's one less continuous damage that's going onto this beacon, and we can keep it alive with Triton's heals. So we just continue to do this loop like we've done before, and the next time we get our shadow, we're going to make a shadowed beacon. Now the one thing we really would like to happen, but there's no control over this, is we would like the shadowed beacon to actually go to the front row. Even though that's a spot that Triton can call for an assist, we'd rather have it on a different row. That way when Glut does his sweep damage, he's not going to hit both of them or remove an evade on both of them. But if we get to the point that we have 3 plus evades, then usually we can keep the beacon alive because Glut's first few attacks are going to just remove those evades, and it's going to be able to keep enough life on our beacon that we can kind of keep it going. And this is one of those things that's very important, that once we get it set, we can just continue to do this loop, do as much damage as we can, and continue to remove turn meter with Gadget every time Gadget gets her IQ up. So you can see with those assists from Cauldron, we're going to keep our skills up and going, which is going to be very, very helpful in this situation. If you ever get into a situation where your shields aren't ready for hero, you're either going to speed up Triton or you're going to speed up Gadget, just depending on what you need in that situation and where those skills are. So that's the important thing, is to make sure you understand exactly where the skill count is and the skill refresh is on Gadget compared to Triton. So as we continue this loop and as we continue this damage, you can see that we're continuing to keep some kind of debuff on Glut. So our Beast is going to be doing those 4 hits, and you can see that Beast's damage really stacks up. And each time Glut does that attack, he is removing all the shields from Beacon. So again, like I said, it's not really about the shields, it's more so about those evades. So I've skipped ahead just a little bit just to show you that we've done that loop over and over and over. Our Beacon is still there, he's still surviving, and now we're getting to the point that we can use a shadow. And it's important to understand when you want to use that shadow, because we want to make sure that the Beacon itself has the most health, the most evades, anything that's going to be helpful, so when we create that other beacon, it's going to also have all those power-ups. So you can see I'm waiting a few turns just to make sure that I have what I want down to make that beacon to have the buffs that I want in place. As long as you understand where Glut's attack is, this is fine, because he's not going to come out of nowhere and do a big attack if you know where his turn meter is compared to where Gadget is with her IQ spell. So at this point we made our shadowed beacon, and like I mentioned, it was great that it went to the front, because now when Glut does his sweep, he's going to hit the back beacon, he's going to hit Beast, and he's going to hit Hero, which are your 3 biggest characters at this point as far as health goes. So we don't really have any fear of that damage going through. If you had a different character like Gadget or something like that in the background, they do have a little less life, so that can be a little worrisome. But now with our second beacon out, it's pretty easy. We just continue to do the loop, we do the damage that we want to do, and as long as we're controlling Glut, then we shouldn't have any problems with making it to the end. So I've skipped ahead a little bit more, and you can see now we have our next shadow available. So there's 2 different choices here. We could either do a Cauldron or we could do a beacon. At this point, our last spot for the shadow is going to be in that far corner. Because this is not a spot that Triton is going to call to assist, there's really no point in putting a Cauldron there. It's going to give 1 magic, it's not that big of a deal. So I just go ahead and make another beacon just to be on the safe side. 3 beacons are always better than 1, so we just kind of continue to set that up, keep that, and do this continued loop until we make it to the end. So once we get here to the end, you can see that we have Shadow ready, we have a lot of skills ready, so we're going to hold as much as we can of that going into the next phase. So just like we saw in the last raid video, I just want to make sure that I'm prepared going into phase 2, that we can get this set back up as we transition from the first one into the second one. So as Glut goes down and we go into the eels, you'll see, just like we said before, we lose our Cauldrons, we lose our beacons, and we have to reset. But because we've kind of waited around a little bit, we know where our skills are, and we know that we can do a lot of those right as we start this phase. So another good thing here is we may or may not have Shadow ready, we may not or may not have Beacon ready, and we do have characters like Beast who can get a taunt up, and Beast can take a lot of damage, which is always good as well. So just be aware of that, to where if you need to throw up a taunt to make sure any of your other characters don't get hit first, you can throw up the taunt. It's a couple turns before Flotsam and Jetsam are going to get their insta-kill, so you can take that time just to really make sure that you get set up first. So at this point, we throw down our beacon. We're gonna see it take a little bit of damage, but we've already got our shadow up, so we can kind of get that in place if we need be, as well as our shields and other spells and abilities that we can. So with the eels, you want to make sure, just like we saw in the other video, you're really focusing on one side or the other. And honestly, Jetsam is the one that you need to focus on the most. His purge ability is the most annoying, so if you can use your IQ on Jetsam, you should be in a much better spot than doing it on Flotsam. The charm is okay, but the place that the charm comes in is usually not that big of a deal. So at this point, we've gone ahead and made our other beacon. We've put it in place, and we're just gonna go through that same process that we had before. We're just gonna continue to charge, add all of our buffs, our evades, our shields, and then we're gonna add our cauldron as soon as we've taken enough damage to create it. All right, so I've skipped ahead just a little bit more to where we have our cauldron. So at this point, we just wanna make sure when we're placing our cauldron, we have it within that assist call area with Triton. So we're gonna place that close to Triton, and then we're gonna make sure that we have our shields up as well. So the thing to notice though, we do have an eel about to take its turn. So we just need to be aware of that as we place our skills and as we use them. So at that point, I didn't place Cauldron just in case something were to happen, like the purge that just happened. So now because of the purge it removed our taunts, I went ahead and I'm going to put the Cauldron down, and I'm going to start that whole process, and hopefully our beacons are going to get a turn to get their taunts back up before Flotsam and Jetsam take their next turn. Alright, and so at this point we can see that we have our beacons up, they're going, we have our Cauldron, we've just lost the beacon, but that's okay. We still have plenty of time to get another one set up. Our shadow's about to come up. So these are the things when you're resetting in between stages, be prepared. It is hard to get the beacons in place. It's hard to get your cauldrons going back because you're so used to the previous run. It may take a few moments to get them where you need them to be for the run. So at this point, we have our beacon up. We're kind of debating should we use it just yet or not, because the beacons have a lot of debuffs on them. It's kind of one of those things where we're not really sure if we should create a new one, if we should just continue with the one that we had. But since the old one didn't really have any shields or evasions or anything like that on it, we went ahead and just created a new one because we had our shadow up right after it. So we could throw the beacon down, create the shadow, and then start that process with 2 brand new beacons. So don't be afraid to do this. Just understand that if you have a beacon with a lot of shields and things like that, it's probably not smart to throw down a new one because it will kill the old one. But in that case, our beacon really didn't have anything going on with it. Alright, so skipping ahead a little bit more, nothing else has really happened. We've done those loops like we showed in the last video, just continuing to do blessings to get all the callings, basics with Beast. Every time Gadget has IQ, we're going to use IQ. If not, she's going to be using basic. And Calhoun, just using her basic over and over and over. You can use her second skill, but I would only use her second skill if you have an eel immediately going after her. If not, just use your basic. It gives less turn meter to the raid bosses, so that's why we use basics everywhere. So at this point, we had a choice of creating a shadow on a cauldron or creating it on a beacon. Because of the fact we only have the one beacon left right now, we went ahead and created a copy of that beacon. So this is kind of the thing where it takes a little bit of time to understand this, but if you want a really good run, you have to understand that you're gonna need multiple beacons on the field. So just keep in mind when you're doing that, which one you want to shadow and what's going to be priority, a beacon or a cauldron when it comes to magic. So you can see as we jump through, a lot of our damage is going specifically to Flotsam. Because we're using IQ over on Jetsam, we are doing all of our main attacks over on Flotsam. So occasionally, when we know we have IQ coming up, we can do some attacks over on Jetsam just to get it up a little bit more, but we're going to continue to do IQ over there because we don't want him doing his purges. So most of our damage is focused on Flotsam, so Flotsam is going to be the one that actually goes down first. Now the other caveat, like we talked about in the other video, is turn meter reduction is not 100% every single time. So there was a rework a while back and a nerf to characters like Bubbles, Tink, Honey Lemon, to where you couldn't do this never-ending turn meter reduction. So even though Gadget is really good and removes a lot of turn meter, every time she does it, it removes a little less and less and less. So eventually Jetsam is going to take a turn, and when he takes a turn, he's probably going to purge a lot of stuff. And this is where those evades come into play, all those buffs, because really we want to make sure it's hitting other things other than your taunt on your beacons. And so you can see now, we've taken down Flotsam, we're focusing on Jetsam, and that's where it becomes a little more tricky. Because we have so many characters now that are going to be hitting Jetsam, Jetsam's going to be getting more turns than he normally would. So with that, we just want to make sure that we're utilizing our skills the best that we can, and we're understanding, again, where those refreshes are on the skills. So at times, we may be in a bad situation where we're down to one beacon, and that's where we really need to understand when is our shadow coming back that we can create another one. And once we do that, we can create the other one, continue to stack like we have been, and just kind of see how far we can get in this particular phase. And if you're lucky with this phase, you're actually going to be able to finish this phase and go into phase 3. So you can see at this point, we've just continued that loop like we talked about, continuing to do that damage. Again, making really specific decisions throughout so that we make sure that those skills are being used properly. We're also trying to save as many of those skills as we can as we transition into P3. And with P3, we've got to do it all again. And sometimes you're going to get a contract that you may or may not like. In this case, we got one we could do pretty quickly. So now we just do that same thing we try to set up. And in this particular run, we weren't able to get it set up properly because every little thing has to be perfect in these runs. So at this point, I'm a little behind. I can't get the beacon set. I can't get the run actually where I need it to be. And we're going to lose our beast. Then once beast is down, it becomes much harder to actually go through because we've lost our big damage dealer.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
And so after that fact, we just try to get as much damage in, see what we can do and close out the run. It's very difficult for Ursula to actually kill your guys without using the insta-kill at this point because we have so much shield going on through all the different phases. But eventually she's going to get enough turns to insta-kill your people one at a time, and that's really what just starts happening. So that's it. You can see how much damage was done. We did solo P1, and that's the big question that's been out there is there a way of doing this in Glut? And obviously there is. It's very, very difficult to do, so just be prepared. It's going to take quite a few attempts, a lot of forfeits to get it set up. So realistically, are you probably going to do it in a lot of raids? Probably not. This raid run, it took about an hour to do. The last raid one we saw took about an hour to do. So they're not very quick raid runs. There's a lot of decisions that you have to make. You can't put it on auto. You have to make every one of those decisions. But I did want to show this off because, again, there's a lot of people asking, how do you use the team? How do you get it set up? And that was really what I wanted to show with this video. So if you like the content you saw, please make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Have you found some teams that work pretty well? Are you trying out the gadget team? What do you think so far? Also, if you like to see this kind of stuff live, I do stream on Twitch Mondays and Wednesdays starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. And there you can check out all kind of stuff, whether it's raid stuff, PvP stuff, or even the free-to-play stuff I'm going to be putting out there pretty soon with my other account. And lastly, in the comments, let me know, what do you want to see next in a video? Is there a specific raid team, a different raid phase you want to focus on? Whatever it may be, let me know. We'll do a video, and talk to you next time.